Welcome back to the stream. You already know what time it is. Welcome back to the Phoenix channel. Today is Friday. What exact day is it? July 12th. In the evening here in Phoenix. It's late into the evening. Hope everybody had a fabulous day. And yeah, I thought I'd come to you guys for another edition of this show. Sponsored by me. So no sponsors needed. This is just a nice kicking it session with the community. So to start things off, obviously we got a roll call. So if you're tuning into this show live, remember to hit that like button, subscribe if you already haven't, and in the top chat, let us know where you're from and if you're a part of the gang. If you haven't joined that group, definitely check it out. If you're local here to Phoenix, I also have a Telegram channel for the local folks. Definitely also check out the Everything EOS channel. All the other amazing content creators, the crypto type, EOS Apologist. You got Enrique, the Mandela Legend, DAPP Stars, right? Crypto Feez. Sonata Systems will probably be dropping in hopefully. So yeah, it's just an amazing time to be alive, I think. So tonight I thought I'd kind of follow up from our discussions yesterday on some of the news. I got our Telegram group right up here. You're looking at the Gang channel. I also got Enrique's hot updates on speed dial. It's like pinned to my to my Telegram application, which I'm showing you guys. And then we got a whole series of news. I'm using Cointelegraph, but pretty much just use anything, but I'm going to use Cointelegraph for just a rundown on what's happened today. Everything from the reactions from Donald Trump tweeting about Bitcoin and what the Coinbase CEO had to say about that, to Brazilian state launching a blockchain platform for government bid contracts, which I thought was pretty interesting, to McAfee on Bitcoin and some of his predictions and updates, and then taking a look at price. So obviously that's all exciting. Got my water with me. We did a 22-hour fast today. Definitely wasn't on the level of I think it was Rezi who said he was able to do, it was either a 48 or 60-hour fast. So congrats to you, Rezi, for doing that. Shout out to Sonata for making his way in, dropping through. Veni Vidi, gang, four corner states. Yes, baby. That's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I want to thank you for tuning in. You're like the consistent Double G's member here, always dropping through and always repping your gang. So that's cool. And if you guys have a topic that you don't see on the boards here, let us know and we can add that to the discussion. I got my water with me. And as I said, I was trying to catch up to Rezi's fasting. Right now I'm all up to, was up to 22 hours today and broke that fast, but felt great. So also got the rare Double G's, like the wrapper chain. So I'm sporting that tonight. Probably rock the gold one tomorrow at my meetup group. So what else have I been doing? I've been reading more of this book, guys. This is a pretty amazing book. Talking about just looking for places all around the world that work for us. So taking the best of what each place around the world offers and making it work for us, whether it's finances, whether it's finding a place to live, or whether it's finding like-minded people who align with us, or things like growing your own food, buying your own land. So it's pretty interesting. I mentioned that book earlier, but I got through the first chapter today and I enjoyed that. Arfigid, I don't know how to say your name, but welcome to the Gang channel, Phoenix channel here. You said, what do you think the solution EOS governance will be, referring to all the Chinese VPs? I'm actually going to get to that in a little bit. I think that's a great question. I've seen a lot of discussions about that. So there has been some exchanging of ideas, and I think you might see some of that baked in with the 1.8 update for EOSIO, which will obviously translate to the mainnet. But we'll get into that a little bit. What's up, Blocksmith? Repping your gang, I see. Thanks for stopping by. So with that said, yeah, it's kind of been a quiet Friday. I don't know. I feel like the community, I think everybody's probably just out partying. But I even noticed in some of the chats, it's just been real quiet. The amount of content being produced, kind of just been real quiet the last day. So I thought I'd keep making these videos and keep the discussions going, the organic discussions. I know a lot of the BPs are having their discussions, but I thought we'd kind of have our own little breakaway discussion. And what I'm trying to do for those that are tuning in who didn't see my video yesterday is trying to get organized and trying to almost make a forum where even we might even have a Zoom call and have a couple people just tune in at some specified time on like a weekly basis and just talk through different topics, whether it's governance like what was talked about here, or some of the exciting updates that we're seeing from projects, or even within the EOSIO software. I think it's important to just maintain that type of communication channel with people all around the globe, and not even just in the United States, right? Hopefully we'll create those paths and communication channels to our friends in China and all other kinds of places as well, because that's what's going to make this project scale and become successful. So going back to the chats here, we had another comment. I remember Dan Larimer said he had some of his underlings at P1 thinking up a solution or two. Did he ever mention anything? He did. He actually published a couple different articles on medium.com. So if you just type in medium.com Dan Larimer, you'll be able to see some of his musings or some of his ideas he had come up with. And he seemed to indicate that he had intended to actually go through with some kind of a code implementation of that for review by the community. So one challenge of that would be, obviously creating the code and the technical solution. The other major challenge to that would be selling people on the idea itself, right? So I think we're kind of a ways from that, but seeing as we got a date for the 1.8 release, or the 1.8 upgrade, I should say, being, I believe it was September 23rd, we do have a good amount of time between now and then to maybe bake something in the cake with that upgrade, because it is going to be more of like a hard fork. So I don't know if EOS Blocksmith has any thoughts on that, but I know some people were talking about maybe a strategy like that, where you not only have the advantages of a 1.8, which we talked about yesterday, being like where developers can pay for accounts on behalf of their users, but you could also have some updates to the way voting is done, right? Or the way block producers are elected. And maybe there's different types of competitions that are involved to allow block producers to produce blocks on the network. And maybe not all of them would be through this new gaming method, but maybe a portion of them would, and then some of them would be the popular vote. You could have a whole series of different strategies involved. And the way Dan seemed to explain it was to have a cocktail of different competitions and different ways in which someone could get elected to become a block producer on the network. So I think it's a very dynamic and evolving system, and we haven't seen the final product. I think this, especially EOS, we just move so fast in terms of how we adjust and improve, right, the system. And I think that's one of the strengths that we have over other chains, right, such as Bitcoin and Litecoin, where it would take light years for them to even do a fraction of what we've been able to accomplish on EOS. And that's not a knock against them, because they also have their advantages, but I just think it's important to recognize that. So I don't know if that answers partially your question, but I, again, would encourage you to take a look at those if you haven't. And let's look to see, in the next couple weeks or maybe in the next month or two, if a proposal comes out, like a formal proposal comes out. Because as you said, Dan did indicate he was looking into this, but in terms of a formal code base release or something that could be tested or audited, I think that's what we would need to see as the next step. And I'm not sure we would find that from anybody else. As a follow-up chat comment, we see some input saying, I think BP centralization is becoming a hindrance to the price, like it is scaring off investors, more project coming on board. I think it has less to do with the actual, and I'm going to somewhat disagree here, but I think it has a little bit less to do with the fear of centralization. I think that is part of it, but I also think that a big portion of this is there was an expectation by some that we would be a lot further along in the number of DApps and also I think the stage in which the DApps would be in at this point within the network's infancy. And I say that with a grain of salt because EOS has only been around for a year, right? But there was a lot of expectations. There was a pent-up expectations of where the network would be and potentially what B1 would announce in June, especially with a project like Voice. And maybe the expectation being that Voice as an application would be available on that day. Like you'd be able to download the app, sign on, and use it. And the reality of where Voice is and where other apps are, and the reality of where the ecosystem is right now, there was a little bit of a gap there, right? And so what you're seeing, I think, and this is just my opinion, is a reality check on where we are at, not in terms of EOS, but as a crypto community overall. Where the ecosystem is at beyond Bitcoin. Where are these other chains at, and what value are they providing to users? And I think EOS, along with others, are still working to demonstrate their value. And I don't think we're really there yet. You might see that with a Voice. You might see that with an Effect.ai, which just got released, by the way, this week. So shout out to you guys at Effect.ai for your successful launch on the network. But it's still going to take work to prove these out. And in addition to that, you're seeing the hindrance with the regulatory environment, right? That makes things very challenging for a company like Block One to successfully launch an application within the U.S. jurisdiction. So you can point to Block One, or you can point to the network and maybe infer that a lot of this is due to fears of centralization. But I would argue that it's actually more of this regulatory landscape and the fact that we haven't really seen that app yet, in my opinion, that stakes the flag down and shows that this technology has staying power. We haven't seen it. We're big believers in it. Obviously, we nerd out on it every night almost. We're here discussing things, right? Whether we're on YouTube or we're in the Telegram chats, we're always having these amazing discussions. But until we actually deliver something that a normal person who knows nothing about blockchain is driven to use, I don't think we're going to see that major level up again. We might see these fluctuations in price. I think you're still going to see Bitcoin maybe rise because it does have this use case being a store of value, which it's evolved from being its original intent to be digital cash and an alternative to the US dollar. You saw Bitcoin transition into this new role within the crypto community. But I think these other projects are still finding their identity, and we're just going to have to see how that evolves. We do nerd out on every night. Yeah, it's true. I definitely nerd out on every night. And I know you guys do too. So looking at some of the comments here, we have Sonata at EOS Authority has a postdoc researcher at King's College investigating new delegated proof of stake. Also, that's harder to game. That's one of them. Blocksmith says, I think those are some really interesting ideas, voting for BPs in different categories. We breed up BP diversity and open up interesting possibilities. Yeah, and that's what I heard. I heard it was going to be more like games. I also heard, allegedly, this is not proven, that there was some talk that Block 1 would potentially use once they got to a certain population on voice, to help them vote for specific BPs. And that could be another way of proving decentralization, and also proving to the regulators that Block 1 isn't controlling the network, right? Because the big concern from, I think, the regulators would be not having any one entity have too much control or too much of a voice, no pun intended, to elect decision makers of a network, right, that's producing blocks. So the challenge with Block 1 voting, from my understanding, is that there's no way that Block 1 could actually only vote for a fraction of the tokens they I guess earn per se. It's all or none. So in order to decentralize that, it would seem like a good solution might be to have more of a DAPP formed through the voice platform. And that would just be one use case of voice. You could see voice, like we talked about earlier, evolving to provide a number of different services to users. So exciting stuff there, guys. But yeah, I really am hyped about this whole game approach to electing block producers, because I think, in my opinion, if you had 1,000 games, technically there's not probably a good way that one area of the globe can win all 1,000 games. If you really have 1,000 games, you give a better opportunity for block producers in other areas and other regions of the world to strengthen their skills and win in those categories. Very much like the Olympics. I mean, if you look at the Olympic Games, you have the United States, which is prominent in some specific sports, and maybe they do even better in summer sports. Maybe long distance running, for example. We've known for a long time that the Kenyans and Ethiopians dominate, and as much as certain other areas train, there's a strong block in no pun intended there, but there's a strong block in certain areas that just have those skill sets. And maybe you could see the same things with block production, right? And if you tie that into geography and make a play on geography and performance based on where users actually are and what block producers can do for those users, and make competitions for those users, maybe that allows an interesting way to elect the people who produce those blocks for those particular users with IBC. So again, I think we're very early in the game. I wouldn't worry about it too much, guys. And in fact, I wanted to just, you guys might roll your eyes, but you check my videos. I usually like to announce when I make major bag purchases. And with this announcement from Trump yesterday, and with the prices the way they were, I actually made like my second biggest bag purchase of 2019. So I think that's saying a lot. I did a whole spectrum of buys today: Bitcoin, Litecoin, and EOS. I actually bought more Bitcoin than I did EOS, but they were pretty significant amounts for what I did, and I didn't think I'd be able to get EOS at this price again. And I am still of the opinion that I think Bitcoin itself will fluctuate between maybe 9,000 and 14,500. So anything between that price between now and say the end of the year, I'm just averaging average buy-in over time. And if I can keep that average at 10, 11,000, I'm a happy person, with the goal of getting a couple more if I can. So that's kind of my goal personally. But obviously this is not investment advice. I'm just sharing with you guys what I'm doing, as I did in December. We had similar discussions in December when Bitcoin was somewhere around 37. We had some $4,400 levels, and those are really good levels to build some positions. So I just want to share that with you guys. So yeah, I call them bag purchases because it's just like a huge bag. Like it will be looked upon later as quite a significant amount. So I was happy to kind of score that today, and I had been debating when to do it, and I felt like this was a good time given the sentiment in the market and the Trump tweets. It was just the best time to do it. So let's take a look at what some of the tabloids are saying here. We got Cointelegraph. Trump tweeting about Bitcoin is achievement unlocked, says Coinbase CEO. And obviously they have amazing artwork here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I really dig the artwork. Whoever does these does an amazing job. But let's take a look at what they say, guys. And if you have comments, definitely cue them in the chat, and let's talk about this. But here it looks like they're saying Donald Trump saying he's not a fan of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is huge for the industry. Commenters were suggesting after new tweets on July 12th. In the hours after the United States president delivered his lackluster appraisal of crypto, the Bitcoin price stayed stable, only to then begin growing to hit 1% gains Friday. Negative or not for proponents, the event marked a psychological milestone for Bitcoin, as Trump had previously held off from mentioning it in public. And so it goes on to say that Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong stated, leading the responses, achievement unlocked, I dreamt about a sitting U.S. president needing to respond to growing cryptocurrency usage years ago. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We just made it to step 3, y'all, he tweeted. Armstrong exemplified the buoyant mood among Bitcoiners. Others likewise thanked Trump for the free publicity, noting a surge in interest documented by Google Trends, while the president being wrong in his opinion also became a talking point on social media. I thought what was interesting about this, guys, what was very interesting about this from my perspective is the fact that you do have a little bit of this left-right paradigm that goes on in the United States. For those that are not in the United States, we have two major dominant parties, I guess you can call it. You have the left and the right. And oftentimes what is interesting, or what I see that's interesting, is you have like this, my team is better than your team. And usually when one team takes a position on a particular issue, or the president of one team takes a particular position on one issue, you see the other side, the opposing side, take the opposite position on this issue. So what I find very, very interesting about this whole situation is the fact that Donald Trump took this position, right? But what's even more interesting is historically that I would argue most of the people in cryptocurrencies, including like myself, are more free market, right? More maybe libertarian. Maybe even they lean perhaps on the conservative side in some regards. Maybe fiscally they're more conservative. Not in other ways, but maybe fiscally they don't believe in running up huge amounts of debt, for example, in a country. But what's very fascinating to me is Trump took this side to cryptocurrencies. And I think what it's actually going to end up doing is it's going to somehow socially engineer people who would not normally have an interest in cryptocurrencies to go research it, right? So you could have liberals who, don't necessarily have interest in cryptocurrency to start buying Bitcoin, to start buying Litecoin, to start buying cryptocurrencies. And it could be a huge boom for the likes of these projects, just all because of this tweet, and all just because of the psychology and how the left and right games in the United States play out. Whether you're for it or against it, I think we all have to recognize that there is that type of a game that occurs in our society. I also think and found it a little bit hilarious, and I want to know what you guys think about this, but I found it kind of funny that you have a lot of people, even in the EOS community, and Blue Crypto, I'm looking at you, you have a lot of people in the EOS community who think that Trump is playing some 4D chess, they call it. So you have a lot of people that are not necessarily supporters of Trump, but they give Trump a lot of credit for being like this mastermind of strategists, and he's playing 4D chess, and that he actually is for crypto, but he pretends he's against crypto, um, to go against the bankers and do all these things. And I'm gonna side with my brother Crypto Blood. If you guys know Crypto Blood makes some amazing content. He covers a lot of things in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. He's another guy. He makes like daily content, but he's been around for a long time. Um, I've been watching him along with back in the very early days. We're talking about like 2010, 2011. Max Kaiser, for those that are big fans of Max Kaiser. So those are the kinds of guys I'd watch, along with DaVinci J15, who was another early crypto brother OG. But what was interesting is, he made a good point that he doesn't think that Donald Trump is for the people. You have some of these people that think, well, Donald Trump is for the people, and he's gonna return all this freedom to a normal average Joe. And politics aside, all I'm saying is Donald is for capitalists, right? People who deploy their money and want low value of dollars, right? And rules and jurisdictional power to become more rent seeking in some ways, right? Rent seeking, like certain capitalists, certain investment firms perform this work where they do mergers and acquisitions and basically perform this rent seeking model in cities and counties and just squeeze all the wealth and value out of an area. Whether you like it or not, that's the way our society is in America is right now. So it's a highly concentrated wealth, right? So anyway, I think it's pretty interesting that some people are taking that perspective with him. I'll leave it at that, but I'm taking like the side of Crypto Blood, and I'm a little bit side-eye with the Donald. I don't really think he's understands what cryptocurrency is personally, but that's just me. So we got a couple questions here, a couple comments. We got a question about why does voice require 1.8? What is being added to 1.8 that voice requires? One of the key things is the ability for the developer of an app to pay for the resources for a user to get an account. So today, when you use an application, you don't necessarily have the ability as a developer to pay for the resources to onboard a user. And with 1.8, it allows, as Sonata has said, the ability for the developers to create those accounts on behalf of the users for seamless onboarding. So that's on point, and thanks Sonata for that response. We did also kind of hint at that yesterday as well as last week, and we do have a date for it, so September 23rd. So mark your calendars, guys, and hopefully we'll see the added governance baked in the cake. But it's up to us, it's up to you guys to show up every night, either here, either on the Crypto Feez show, EOS, Everything EOS. They do a show usually on Saturdays. It's up to us to kind of show up and have this discussion, and hopefully, like I said, to get you guys to not be afraid to show your face and to have these discussions. It would be awesome to have it even more dynamic than what it is now. And as Sonata says, yes, users will not even know they're using a blockchain. So that would be another big part of it. So with that said, people are excited about this tweet from the Donald. I personally don't think that he knows what he's talking about. We also had, as I mentioned in my show yesterday, some congressperson getting LIBOR and Libra confused. So we got all kinds of people that confused. We got Maxine Water, who's confused as usual. So or maybe they act confused and maybe that's part of their game. Who knows? But the point is, the United States government and even the United States, as the days go by, and if you're open-minded and you research and you start to observe even what Chinese BPs are doing, or anything around the world outside of the United States, you're starting to realize that the talent and the innovation is actually flowing away from the United States. And I hate to say that, but that's the reality of the situation. So, a lot of people have this narrative like it's China versus the US, or Russia versus the US, or all these notions of countries and lines and boundaries. But when you start to look at what the United States actually is and you compare it to other areas that used to be maybe more totalitarian, or maybe still are, but you're starting to see some of those, the thread, the very fabric that made this place special and open to innovation and open to failure, right? To try things and fail, to being more restrictive. It makes you start to question if we're headed in the right direction. So, another comment here. We got a comment that says, nightmare bearish scenario, Chinese BPs ignore the 1.8 update. If they ignore the 1.8 update, it actually, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily matter. It would be possible probably for another chain to spin it up and for people to use that as the basis for deploying their applications, especially with a key feature being the ability for developers to pay for users' accounts. I wouldn't see that happening, but we'll have to see. We also saw some interesting movement yesterday with, I think, some voting proxies. I know Brock Pierce had about 5 million votes proxy to him from BitThumb, which is one of the larger exchanges. 5 million votes, 5 million EOS is nothing to sneeze at. So maybe we'll see more exchanges follow in their direction. And, the exchanges together, if they were to exercise that, practice, and elect actual people who do the research and who care about decentralization and block producers who are producing value, you could see a major shakeup in the elected block producers between now and September. And that's a definite possibility here. So just don't worry about it, guys. Let's see how it plays out. We've gotten this far, and it's hard to imagine that. A little bit over a year ago, there were even questions about whether or not EOS would successfully launch. When you think just how far we've gone with the ability to have many apps, and many of them just getting started, but you're starting to see, I think, examples like Effect.ai. You're starting to hear about the Everpedia team, ramping up their operations and their upgrades to their user interfaces, right? And you start to hear about projects like EVA, who a lot of people have forgotten about, but I haven't. You have a lot of potential here. It only takes one, guys, to make that splash, and I think we're going to see it very soon. So I would say just keep your voices heard, no pun intended, and stay engaged. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in for this, because this is what it's about. It's about staying engaged and having these conversations. So Max Kaiser, obviously my main man there, and RT host and regular Bitcoin bull, considered Trump to have nullified his chances of re-election in 2020, while eToro senior analyst Maddie Greenspan described his words as, quote, an early nomination for the most bullish tweet of the year. That's pretty ballsy. Despite the conversely more stable price performance since the tweets, the possibility of a Trump pump occurred for Bitcoin was also gaining traction among analysts. Trump is bullish for Bitcoin generally because his media tactics wobble geopolitical uncertainty. Thanks for all the dollars flowing into Bitcoin, cryptographer and Hashcash inventor Adam Back added. In the meantime, another lesser cryptocurrency took opportunity to capitalize on the buzz. Trump coin, an altcoin but unknown since it appeared in 2016 was up 28% Friday. So that's interesting. But yeah, to your point, the EVA project, that rideshare project, that was one of the things I was most excited about when I first heard about EOS. In fact, if you go back in my channel, very early days of EOS, when not too many people were making videos about EOS, I could count on my finger, there was probably like 5, maybe 10 people making videos about EOS. Clay Albright was one of them, and I think we used to exchange ideas along with crypto fees, and EOS San Diego was also there. But ride sharing was one of those use cases. In my opinion, I thought besides ride sharing, besides social media, I thought was ripe for disruption, just because of what I've seen in the ride sharing market as a consumer, as someone who uses these services and is aware of the percentage of fees that these people get taken from them as drivers. I thought that was more ripe as a use case for the technology versus something like social media. But that was just me, talking. And so we haven't really seen that transition into the United States markets, but I think that is still one of the runnings for an application that can. So you can't sleep on these things, guys. I know it's easy to overlook these things, forget about them, think about the concerns with centralization and will EOS scale and all these things, but it's baby steps, right? And we're getting there every day. So, but what did you guys think about that article? I thought it was fascinating. People seem to be really bullish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, thanks to Trump. So that's interesting. We also got our second article here, McAfee on Bitcoin, exile in the US. And in his words, no way the current system can survive. So let's talk about this a little bit. Obviously, amazing artwork, as always. You got McAfee with his typical style there. But, his main quote I want to share with you guys here is that he says, "We each have the right to earn a living and do what we wish with the money that we earn. I mean, if not, then we are still living under the control of the financial system we are trying to escape from. That is the purpose of digital currency, to give control of currency back to the people rather than to governments and institutions that can control the currency that we use." So he goes on to, I think, threaten the government and is claiming he can allegedly take down the government. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely check out that interview. It's a 14-minute talk, and he's a pretty interesting guy. He's right now living in Cuba, of all places, and allegedly he hasn't paid taxes in 8 years. That's an interesting topic I was going to share with you guys. For me, as you guys know, I've been researching a lot about these things, and I think my main plan is going to be to obviously abide by all the rules, keep the cryptos as a long-term capital gains type position, okay, within the United States for now. And then, cash out, pay the taxes, but start finding, after that point, ways to consider global destinations. Because what I'm coming to the realization of is that this is not the best area for me. Maybe it's the best, maybe it's a good area for you, but when you have candid conversations with yourself, when you look at the cost of living, when you look at the benefits of where the taxes go, when you look at the opportunities for innovation and the regulatory space, it's just not really here. So, for now, we have time, to save money, to get our things in order, per se, right? And pay your taxes and do what you need to. But I think strategically now is a good opportunity to figure out a game plan. And so over the past year and a half, that's basically what I've been doing. I've been, cutting back, working hard, saving my money. And I think I'd encourage the gang and everybody else who's watching this video to consider doing the same thing, because I think there's going to come a time where, and you're already seeing it, where the keys to innovation are slowing here in the United States. And a lot of people are looking at these Chinese VPs and others around the world as being against us, but really the enemy, in my opinion, is the government. If you look at it from the perspective of embracing and empowering this ecosystem of cryptocurrencies and other innovations as well. So I think it's a good time to take inventory of where things are at, have a realistic conversation with yourself, and figure out strategically what you can do to at least give yourself an opportunity to try and fail elsewhere. So that's all I'm really thinking right now. I'm thinking about having at least the ability to fail elsewhere and not being under the thumb of some government that doesn't even allow the innovation or trial of something to begin at all. That's an issue. So yeah, we already talked about the Donald. We got some EOS news here. EOS Exchange and the Lumi wallet. So this was some pretty big news. It says now it is possible to exchange your EOS directly inside the Lumi wallet app. An exchange powered by Changely allows you to easily swap EOS to more than 1,200 cryptocurrencies listed by Lumi. Lumi's process of full EOS adoption has come a long way since the end of April when the support of the blockchain was announced. Lumi wallet was learned, that doesn't make sense, but to import, export, hold, and transfer EOS. So if you guys want to learn about that, definitely check out that article. We're seeing, again, on a daily basis, news come out on progress being made within the EOS ecosystem and elsewhere. Here we have a news story about Brazilian state launches blockchain platform for government contract bids. I think this is one of the other exciting use cases we'll see with blockchain. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more development on this front within the EOS ecosystem. I haven't really heard of a project working on this. This is actually my area of interest and expertise because I sort of deal with these things on a daily basis, and I see the benefit that something like this could provide governments all around the world. So again, I'd like to hear if anybody knows of a project that is on EOS that is doing this. Please let me know so I can research that and get in touch with them. But yeah, you're seeing some progress here by government, Brazilian government, to look at technology like this. So pretty exciting stuff there. And then we have some more concerns expressed by, this time, an Ethereum co-founder, Mahi Aislil, concerned over the Libra centralization. So I think this article is going on to, they have some amazing artwork here as usual. So articles going on to talk about that Facebook intends to, quote, mislead the regulators who have learned in the last few years that blockchain is not something that can easily be regulated. It should be treated as an entity trying to create a centralized currency. And so he goes on to make a good point here that if a Libra user falls out of favor with one of the big companies running network nodes, which include Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, they could have their transactions blocked or reversed. Should they be in a position to control what you post from your device? He asked rhetorically. This has implications in so many areas, from an economic to the political to the technological to the surveillance and data privacy. Facebook is actively manipulating the behavior of people on a global scale. And this is true. I don't know if you guys heard, but today Facebook got a little slap on the wrist of $5 billion for their issues with, I guess, the data protection, right? Consumer data protection and privacy. And $5 billion is nothing because Facebook has about $568 billion. So it's really just a slap on the wrist. It's I'm sure Facebook is jumping up and down laughing at all the plebs who use it. But my big concern, tying this back into how it relates to EOS, has been, as I expressed in the channels today, on voice and the likes of it, has been that, I would hope that somebody like a Block One wouldn't give off too many concessions for gaining approval for voice, because we're going to see a lot of questions about this project. And My main concern, just being the skeptic I am, is what are those concessions going to be? What is the negotiation going to be? Because you can bet, and I can bet you, um, bottom dollar, that it's not like the government's just going to sit back and take it. They're likely going to want something in return for an approval. Will that mean a backdoor into something like voice? I hope not. So it's important for us to raise the awareness and ask these questions to Block One and Dan Larimer, to have a candid conversation about what that relationship is going to be with the governments around the world, and how do we ensure that users are protected, users have the ability to express themselves, and users to some extent can maintain their safety, right? Because with KYC and the naming of somebody, it can be a little bit sketchy depending on which part of the world you live in. And I know a lot of people say, well, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it on the network. Well, sure, but if the whole point is to give people a voice to express themselves, what good is the application doing if you don't even allow users to express themselves in the honest way they feel like doing that? And so I'd ask you guys that. So with that said, guys, we're about 46 minutes in. I want to thank you guys for tuning into my channel. I hope you like this content, and I hope to keep doing these on a consistent basis. If you have an interest in joining our little nighttime discussions here and going more into like a Zoom format where you're talking and you're contributing to this show, get in touch with me in the Gang channel. And I'm looking particularly for people who can actually help host it, because I don't think my bandwidth is very good quality to host something like that. So I'm hoping to connect and partner with others who can do it. If you're a block producer and you want to do it, that would be great. But ideally, you're more of like a community organizer who is interested in this, and just have something that's organic where people can come in and come out and bounce ideas. I think that would be awesome. So I want to again thank you guys for that, and thank you for all your comments. We got a late comment here from Marco saying, "I think Facebook for this Libra is Bitcoin's EOS PR marketing for governments." I sure hope so, but again, Marco, as I mentioned a couple minutes earlier, my biggest concern is going to be, the type of relationship that Block One has with the U.S. government in particular. What we wouldn't want to see is something that can get so dominant that and have a relationship that is so close that it's not well defined, that then it becomes a threat to people's freedoms, and we're kind of caught in the same position we're in now. So as much as I like Block One and Dan Larimer, I think it's important as community leaders and people who speak and who are articulate and who understand the technology enough. Maybe we don't code day in, day out, but we're dangerous enough to understand the technology. We've been around since the BitShares days, right? We've been around since the earlier days of Bitcoin. We've been around since the earlier days of Litecoin to speak up and raise questions and have difficult conversations with our community members, and have tribes of elders who are making these discussions because they're important to have. And thank you for Ernest of Gala for dropping in, as well as Marco. If you guys like the content, consider always tuning into the stream, consider subscribing, tell your friends about it, and share it in the Telegram channels, because that's how we're able to grow as a community. And also check out my colleagues, Crypto Feez, Crypto Type, EOS Apologists. We got DAPP stars. We got the Everything EOS crew. So we're rolling pretty deep here. EOS is a great community, I think, in terms of its organic content. You have these different personalities, and I think that's what makes us very strong, and hopefully we can keep that going. So I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys have a good evening. Hit the like button, and until hopefully tomorrow, I will see you then. Peace out and much love.